I've been kind of putting off this video as these series of events have taken place, you know, a little while ago, not too while ago. It's still all fresh. This whole process only started about 6 months ago, but I just didn't know if there was a right or wrong way to do it, but I figured just doing it is the best way to do it versus, you know, not doing it at all. So anyway, today, totally different video. We're not fishing, we're not doing nothing. We're in just this beautiful little area in Panama City, and we're in the John boat today. Perfect, because today, ironically, tiny boats is what brought me to Jesus Christ. And I've got my entire thing written out here on my phone, and I'm just gonna kind of look at it and read it, and I just don't want to miss anything, and I don't know, let's just get into it. Now, I apologize for the wind. I tried to find some wind protection, and it's definitely windier than it was supposed to be today. So like I said, you're gonna see me looking at my notes because this whole thing is written out. It all came to me. I was sitting in the bathtub, and it just came to me, and it just happened. So it is what it is. Let's get into it. So I did grow up in a Christian household my whole life, and I was actually baptized at the age of 10, and we just came across that photo. I called myself a Christian, of course, but I was the furthest thing from it. You know, I stopped going to church, I idolized money, I cussed like a sailor, I deceived people. About to run into a crab trap. I deceived people in business for financial gain, stored up earthly items like jewelry and cars, and was truly on my highway to hell. And this was me. This was me 1 year ago. This was me 6 months ago. 6 months ago, folks. I was that guy 6 months ago. And it's kind of crazy saying that out loud because of this whole series of events has happened within 6 months. And how do I know it was 6 months? Because 6 months ago, I met the man that changed my life. And the way I put it, the straw that broke the camel's back, the final link to the puzzle where I could not deny it anymore, and it was just in my face. Okay, so let's go back. I moved to Florida about 13 months ago. 1 year, 1 month. And I moved to Florida with a real estate license, wanting to sell, and stack cash, sell beach houses, do whatever it takes to do it, to make it. And I didn't even feel ready to move here. I had a horrible year of real estate the year prior because that was right when interest rates shot up and people really shut down. It's still tough now, but that was when the transition went from 2% to, you know, 7%, and people were freaking out. So I just had a horrible year. I just didn't feel ready. Anyway, I couldn't even really afford to move here because it cost me like 6 grand just to get us here into an apartment. And when I moved here, I was gonna have to start the real estate business over. So it was just a nightmare situation. And my wife was going to get a full-time job, and I was going to sell real estate. This was our plan. Start a new real estate business, she gets a full-time job, and we get a modest little 1-bedroom apartment to start out with. And I wanted a boat so bad, but I knew realistically that that wasn't going to happen. Then I started looking for cheap tiny boats, and I bought the water tender. A week later, I learned about the Pond Prowler, found a Pond Prowler, and I bought the Pond Prowler. I was supposed to buy the Pond Prowler mini pontoon boat to flip, but I ended up falling in love with it and flipping the water tender. So now I have the Pond Prowler, not this boat. I should have taken the Prowler out for today's video, for this specific video, but it wasn't on the trailer. And I guess you could say without this Pond Prowler boat, I would not be sitting here right now. I would not be making this video. And this would not be my story. It would be my story, but it would be a different story. And it would be a more drawn out story. And this Pond Prowler, you know? Anyway, point being is this is a crucial part of my story. And it all comes together. First of all, my loving wife had recently been on fire for the Lord. She tried inspiring me and convincing me and witnessing to me. You know, she tried everything, and I fought back every step of the way. I really did. I didn't want to hear it. And Greyson Roberts didn't need nobody or anybody, no help, even from God. That's how I was, cocky. I didn't need anybody. You know, I'm 23 now, you know, 22, 21, 20. We've been together for 5 years, married for over a year. And that's just how I was, man. Young man, business owner, thought I could take on the world. But oh my gosh, has that changed? Wow, unbelievable. Also, at the time, I was on multiple antidepressants, anxiety medication, and panic disorder medications. Spoiler alert, the Lord actually set me free from those evil pills, and I take nothing, and I feel so much better. The second I started leaning on the Lord and praying for it, He got me through the withdrawals, and these were high doses and multiple medications, multiple SSRIs. It was nasty stuff getting out of it, but I tried 6 times in my life to get out of it, And the only time that worked, and worked fast, and wasn't even that hard, was when I was leaning on the Lord. And I'm not even joking you. Anyway, this all comes together, I promise you. But regardless, I was resisting her every move. She did educate me very much on a lot of things. So I had a ton of knowledge on what being a true Christian was actually like. A true Christian, not someone that just says they're Christian and goes to church. A real Christian. Now, some people use that title loosely, but not her. She wasn't cussing, she was saving herself from marriage with me. All the stuff I thought was stupid. And, you know, she taught me so much. Even though at the time, I didn't see it as useful. I thought it was just, you know, leave me alone with it. I did actually take all the information into my brain. So as she was telling me all of this stuff and I was rejecting it, it was still being planted into my soul, into my brain, and I didn't realize this at the time. And, you know, I'm able to use the things she taught me with her walk when things come up on her end, and it's just the things that I was rejecting is implanted in me. So without her doing that and arming me with all of the information of what a true Christian is, about what Christ is really like, and, you know, the difference between relationship and religion, and separating the church from the people, and all this stuff, you know, without her doing all of this, without her drilling it into my brain for years and me rejecting it, you know, I would have not have had the overnight explosion I did. Because for a lot of people, this is a learning process. But for me, I already knew the truth, because the truth has been spoken into me for years and years and years by my gorgeous wife. Okay, so let's go back. We moved to Florida a year ago. We buy this boat after a few months, and we start making videos with it, and it starts doing well. The videos actually start doing well, the videos on this channel. And she never ends up actually having to get that job, and I never even started real estate. But note, I did have a full-time furniture business, and I still dabble in it part-time to this day. We're currently trying to do our finances biblically and owe nobody anything and get all our debt. So I'm going to get back into couch flipping to just be completely 100% debt free. But at this time, when I was just starting these videos, that's how we were able to make a good income without her having to go to work, is this furniture business. But the videos did start picking up. But the point is, things were working out. As soon as we got here, things were working out, and it started to feel like we were here for a reason, and all the fear and anxiety and pretty much 100% guarantee that our life was going to suck for a couple years while we got established, and I built a business, and she worked a full-time job for the first time in our relationship. You know, I was convinced this was going to suck, but at this point I was like, hey, maybe we're supposed to be here. Anyway, my wife ends up getting oral surgery. She gets her wisdom teeth removed, but she had TMJ, but we didn't realize how bad her TMJ was, and this triggered one of the most difficult points of her life and of my life. And it was basically, long story short, 2 weeks of 9 out of 10, 24/7 pain. Opioids didn't help, nothing helped. Went to the orthodontist, they were absolutely worthless, no sympathy. And it was the dentist, not the orthodontist. And it was basically, she couldn't do anything. She couldn't cook, clean, she couldn't lay in bed, she was screaming, and it was just an absolute nightmare. And after a couple weeks, you know, I had to start getting back to work. I had to start making some money again, because I was just taking care of her full time, because it was just that awful. So my mother and my grandmother make their way up, so they start taking care of Kinsey while I'm out to work. Well, she turns a corner after a few days of her being here, and my mother and grandmother are staying in a hotel on the beach side as we're staying on the town side. I mean, imagine your bride being in 10 out of 10 pain for weeks on end with no relief, even opioids not working, prescribed from the doctors, and she's just screaming in agony. I mean, darkest period of my life. It was horrible 2 weeks, unbelievable. But it ended up being for the greater good. You'll have to excuse the planes overhead. Sometimes they go on for a long time. But my mother and grandmother were staying in a hotel on the beach, and my mom called me raving about this valet that she met. And I was like, what do you mean? She's an introvert. My mother is an introvert. She does not go up to talk to people. She does not rave about people like this, unless it's friends and family, of course. It's just not who she is. She doesn't go up, talk to strangers, and then try to convince other people to be friends with them. And that's what was happening. She called me, she says, you need to meet this guy. I don't know what it is, but I want to introduce you to him. So I'm like, okay, whatever. You know, I was like, I don't care. I don't have time for friends. I don't want to deal with this. I'm trying to build a business, build a life for me and my family, and get as rich as possible, right? And anyway, I go to her hotel, and we're walking across the street to a hotel. It's actually next door. And this man is out there, and my mom starts eyeballing him, giving the side eye, kind of like almost in panic mode, but he was working a valet, and he couldn't talk at the time, so we just moved on, ate, and we came back through, and he was still out there. And I could tell in her eyes she was not taking no for an answer, and it was kind of wigging me out a little bit. I'm like, who is this? This isn't my mom. What are you trying to do? Anyway, she flags him down, she's so happy to see him, and his name is John Peters. And she introduces us. We say, hey, yeah, sure, we'll hang out. I'm 23, he's, 34. Sure, we'll go fish, whatever. But I can't emphasize enough how not normal this behavior is for my mom to do this. Anyway, John Peters, baby. About a week later, my mother and grandmother leave, Kenzie's fine, me and John meet up, we go to St. Andrews State Park in Panama City Beach, and we start fishing. And I actually catch one of my first good saltwater fishes since living here, one of my first actual target species. And I quickly realized that he was one of the most Christian people I've ever met and my first real true Christian friend. And he was reciting scripture. He was the real deal. He was recommending good Bibles. He was talking about all sorts of stuff. And he actually bought me one of my favorite Bibles that I read to this day. And I just never been around that kind of energy. I mean, my parents were, not forcing it down my throat because of how I was, how hard-headed I was, how rejecting I was of it, even though I called myself a Christian just to feel better about myself. And, this guy was the real deal. And it was the first time I actually had a great connection. We hit it off. I was in love with this guy immediately. I mean, we're still best friends to this day. We talk all the time. John Peters, if you're watching this, I love you, brother. And you are the second piece to this overall puzzle. My wife was the first one. You are number two. And when I met you, you invited me to your church. You said I go to Destiny Worship Center in Panama City Beach, about 30 minutes from where you live, and I go to the 9:30 service, one of, at the time, 3 services. And I thought, great, that's awesome. I don't like going to church. I like sleeping in on the weekends, and I don't enjoy sitting there and being talked to and told what to do and, live my life in ways that don't sound fun, which are actually a ton of fun. And I would never do anything else the rest of my life besides live the way that they were talking about in church. But at the time, it is what it is. So he invited me to church. I'm like, okay, yeah, maybe one day. Kenzie wants to find a church really bad, and she's been trying to talk me into going to church. So I figured, maybe in a couple months, if she puts me in a corner, we'll go try that church. Anyway, we had a blast for a few hours, and we kept in contact after that. Okay, fast forward about a month. This is where the story all starts coming together and connecting. Fast forward about a month, and we take the Pond Prowler out, and we're in a spot that we don't really have any business being in. It's not illegal, it's not dangerous, it's just a little tide pool. And this whole experience was caught on camera. And you can go back and watch the video, it's still up. Of course it is, I love the video. It's tiny boating in a tide pool or something like that. But what we do is we take our Pond Prowler, we're on the flats, and we find this tiny little cut, so small, even our 10-foot little pontoon John boat cannot get in it. So I get out, I push us through it, and we're in this, 1.5 deep, tiny tide pool, completely tucked around, surrounded by trees, surrounded by grass. I mean, we were hidden. It was super cool because nobody could really see us, and it was just a really cool little place to be. There was no fish in there. We were just kind of messing around and hanging out and had a ton of fun doing it. But anyway, we're sitting in there, and we see this little skiff blow by. This old man on a skiff blowing by. I mean, he's going probably 25 miles an hour. And there's, we just looked at it and was like, oh, that's a cool little skiff, and just didn't think anything of it. I mean, he was far away. He was really far away. But then all of a sudden he just looked right at us. We made eye contact. And he looked back and he's looking and he's looking and he's looking and he's looking faster and faster and faster until finally he starts staring at us and just absolutely cuts his boat 90 degrees full speed right towards us. Kenzie's like, oh no, who is this? What are they doing? Why are they aggressively approaching us like this? Like they just saw a pot of gold. She's like, go get your gun. I'm like, okay, is this FWC? Because my Pond Prowler wasn't registered, and it was just a lot of stuff going through our heads. Anyway, it was this man named Sean Johnston, and it's that older gentleman with the super, super cool skiff that you see at the end of that video. And, we start chatting and talking about stuff, and the video cuts.
Do what?
You're the YouTuber.
I am.
Yeah, I follow you.
Do ya? Well, I appreciate it.
Sean.
Greyson, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Wow, you mind if I'm filming right now? You mind if I put this on there? Golly.
But what the video doesn't show is the hour to 2 hours we sat on our boats in that exact spot talking and cementing the foundation of our relationship to this day. Point being is Sean never should have saw us in there, going at the speed, going at the angle because of where we were tucked away. But when he pulled up, he started saying, hey, Greyson Roberts. He called me out by name. And I was like, oh, okay, this isn't good. This guy knows me by name. Then I realized it wasn't FWC. It wasn't the IRS. And, he pulls up and he's like, I watch your videos. And I was like, what? No way. I'd just only been making them for a few months and I thought it was really cool. But got to talking boats. And he kind of gave off this vibe, this like something in this dude was a little bit different, and he was just so happy, he was so polite, he was so nice. And I don't know really how it came up, but you know, Kinsey started talking about something and he started talking about something, but it ended up on the topic of faith. And then very quickly, him and Kinsey just hit it off. They just start talking about their faith and Christianity and their experiences. And Kinsey shares her testimony with him about how she was actually on the brink of death. I mean, milliseconds away from death. She was basically kayaking after a flood. It was whitewater rapids. It shoves her, tips her under her sit-in canoe. Her canoe fills with water, stuck over her head, shoves her under a sunken log and pins her under there. And she is gasping for air. And in that moment, she met Jesus and she started repenting for her sins, and it all made sense. And when she came home that day, she was a different person. She met Jesus under that water. It's hard to talk about. Anyway, scariest moment, she could hear her mother just floating away. Nothing she could do. She can't fight the current. Her daughter's trapped under there, and she knows she's under there, and all she can hear is her mother screaming through the water. And horrible situation. The Lord sets her free last second, right before, you know, she drowns. She just somehow it just releases her grasp. And you know, she lost a shoe in the process, but she spared her life. So that was a near-death experience, and she shared that with him. And he was like, that's incredible. Let me share you my testimony, and it involves my daughter. And his daughter's testimony, I'm not gonna get into the details, but maybe one day he'll share it publicly. It is like on the internet, maybe on this channel. His daughter's testimony, I mean, she literally died, met Jesus, and came back to earth. And I know it sounds crazy, but trust me, if you hear the details, I'm not gonna tell someone else's testimony without their permission, of course. But in the way that she was rescued and who was there and what they happened to have and what they did, unbelievable. She fell through an ice pond and it was just absolute nightmare situation, but the way things unfolded was none other than the hands of God. So they hit it off, and he invites us to his church. He says, I go to Destiny Worship Center in Panama City Beach at the 9:30 service. And at the time, I didn't even remember that's what John said. And keep in mind, these guys have never met. They live 45 minutes apart. Sean lives 45 minutes from this church. I live 30. He's even farther from it. So, I mean, there's a church on every corner, and every church has multiple services. The odds that these two guys I've connected with are completely unaware of each other's existences happens to go to the exact same church at the exact same time. And both have been put into my life within about 30 days. So he invites us to this church, and I didn't actually pick up on this until I got home, and I was like, wait a minute. I texted John. I was like, what church do you go to? And then he told me, and I just got full body chills. I'm getting chills right now. I was like, what are the odds that you guys go to this exact same church? Anyway, so he invited us, and we really hit it off, and it was great, but he told me something that I thought was just bizarre, something that kind of threw the whole conversation off. He was like, listen, I prayed to meet you. I found you on YouTube a week ago, and I told my wife I wanted to meet you, and I prayed and I prayed and I prayed that I would meet Greyson Roberts, but I prayed that I would meet him on the water. So that's why when I was driving full speed, the Lord spoke to me, that's him. That's him right there. What are the odds? So he says that the Holy Spirit spoke to him, that I was there, and that's how he found me when he shouldn't have found me. He comes up. His answer is prayer. He meets who he wanted to meet on the water, but it wasn't because he was some fangirl. He didn't know why he wanted to meet me. He just said he felt like he needed to connect with me for some reason. So that alone is crazy, that this random guy prays to meet me in a very specific way, and it happens in such a hidden area. And if my wife wasn't there, maybe this would have been a different experience, because she came home. I mean, I think we both cried on the way home after this happened. Long story short, after he said that, I was like, you prayed to meet me? Okay, that's one thing. And he said, yes, Grayson, I prayed to meet you. It just happened. And let me tell you, I've done this 4 other times in my life. 4 other times in my life. And every single time I did this, we became lifelong brothers. And he told me, he's like, you're number 5, buddy. And I was like, okay. Basically, the stranger is telling me that we are now going to be brothers. Fast forward, he's basically my Florida father and spiritual mentor and best friend. I mean, I talk to him every single day, most of the time, all day. And anytime I'm on my phone, she's like, you're talking to Sean, aren't you? Yep. Anyway, he told me that, and I was like, okay, you prayed to meet me, and you know, I'm kind of feeling this vibe, I'm feeling the energy, and this was before I totally made the transition. And I just thought that was the strangest thing ever, but he was right on the money, dude. Look at us now. He's been in so many videos on this channel. I mean, he was in videos like 2 or 3 times a week for months after that. I mean, unbelievable amount of content I have made with Sean after that day, I mean, I think we fished a couple days later, and we just absolutely hit it off, and the rest is history.
I'm gonna do a little voiceover here because I don't think I'm emphasizing enough how godly of a man Sean is. I mean, I didn't even know you could get to the level that Sean gets to. And he always says, hey, brother, it's not me, it's who lives in me. And I've got mentors that I can't believe that, they seem impossible to get that godly. And there's, people in his life that blow him away when he blows me away and he blows my wife away. And he is just, I mean, one of the best people I've ever met all around. I mean, he's just, I can't say enough good things about him. I love him to death. I would do anything for him. And he is on fire. On fire for God, unlike anything I have seen in my life.
And some of you guys actually commented, like, it's so great to see you, connecting with this fan that found you on the water. It's so awesome to see that you made a friend and you're hanging out with this guy and you're doing stuff with him. But they had no idea the explosion in faith that was happening in the background, and the changes in my life, and the changes in my heart, and the changes in my attitude, and the changes in my behavior, and the changes in everything. So first it was my wife that was put in my life for a reason to educate me on all of this stuff. Then it was John to really grease me up and get me ready for this bomb drop of Sean. And at this point on the way home, I was in tears and I was like, my life is working out. The Lord is taking care of us. My wife is beyond on fire for the Lord. She gave me a chance. John has just been a good influence and just an amazing guy and really kind of opened my mind up, and Sean closed the deal. Of course, me, Sean, and John, and Kinsey, we've all fished together. We've all caught some hogs together, and we're all one big happy family now. But it's just crazy. It's just crazy. Without Kinsey having this mouth injury, my mother never would have came. Without my mother never coming, she never would have basically forced me to meet John. And without John, I don't know if I would have been able to have an open enough mind, because I've never been around such a good influence. And he's also 10 years older than me, so a good mentor figure. And without him, I wouldn't have been as receptive to the crazy things that at the time, crazy I thought, that Sean was telling me. But because of my mother, my wife, and both my new best friends, I'm a full-blown Christian. I mean, you guys have seen it in my content. You've seen the shift. It is night and day. I go back and look at old content. I was like, who is this guy? I know who it is. A guy without Christ, a guy who is severely depressed, has mental issues, has financial issues, and has relationship issues, marriage issues, and I don't miss that life, man. I don't miss cussing. I don't miss drinking. I don't miss going to the bar. I don't miss listening to horrible rap music with insane lyrics. I don't miss any of it. Any of it. My friends, they'll make fun of me. It's like, why do you say heck and frick and all that stuff? And it's like, because it feels good. And I don't think about it. My brain goes there naturally. That's what's cool. If something happens, I don't go F. I go crap. It's cool how it works. Pray for a pure mind. Of course, I'm not perfect by any means. Yes, I still sin. Everybody sins. We're still in the flesh. But my life has improved significantly. And when issues come up, financial issues come up, friend issues, marriage issues, it's just all seen from a completely different lens. And it just makes life so much easier when you have a purpose. And that purpose is to lead others to Jesus Christ. And that's why you hear me talk about it so much in my videos. And it's not because I'm thinking about it, I'm trying, it comes out. And if my wife hadn't nailed the truth into me over the years, this whole overnight flip probably would never have happened. It would have, but it wouldn't have been basically overnight. It wouldn't have been so immediate. I would have had to have learned all of the rules, how all of it works. But growing up in church and my wife telling me the truth, how true Christians live, not just the average Joe that goes to church, without that information, I would have had a lot slower transition. So there's so much more that happened in this story, and I know this is a super long video and I rambled, but I don't know how to do this properly. I've written it down a bunch. I just don't know. I don't know how to do it. It just came out on this Google Doc, and I've read it a million times. I didn't know how to present it. I went off script, and I don't know if this made any sense. But I'm a new man. I have a new lease on life. I feel great, and praise the Lord. Anyway, happy boating, tight lines, and God bless.